I'm probably the first person to ever get hands-on with a brand new 40mm GMT Ascent from Erebus. I was the one who actually photographed them for their website about 2 months ago. Now this is not a review, I actually didn't get a chance to wear the watches, but I did get a chance to film them. And I do want to share a couple of thoughts about these watches because the first thing that I saw as a photographer when I opened up the parcels, it was like eye candy. There was so much variety in the colours to choose from. Some of them I really liked, others, well, not so much. But at the end of the day, I think it's a subjective point of view. You're going to be drawn to certain variants and certain styles of watches, and in other cases, you're not going to like them at all. And that's quite normal. And for me, that's why this hobby is so special and unique. Now, spending a very long time with all these watches, getting close and personal in the photography, there's obviously strong DNA vibes from other brands, such as the Rolex Explorer 2, I can see Grand Seiko in this particular layout, Christopher Ward, you name it. And to me, that's pretty much a safe design. It works, and brands mimic one another in that department because that formula works. And I want to speak more about that in my room for improvement section of this video, even though this is not a review, because I actually didn't wear the watches. I spent so much time photographing them, cleaning them, getting them right for Erebus's website, alongside all my other photography commitments as well as watch commitments throughout the last 2 or 3 months. I actually neglected to wear the watches. But I will show you the visuals, the way different colors react to different lighting scenarios. And honestly, even just playing with these watches, on a technical standpoint, I really couldn't find many faults, if any. All the watches are equipped with the Miyota 9075 True GMT, or as some call it, Traveler's GMT. And for those who know the movement, obviously there is no quick set date. Just like my GMT Spring Drive, it's a bit of a dilemma trying to get that date turned over. You have to cycle through quite a few times before you find the appropriate date that suits the day you're wearing the watch. Now, dimension wise on all these watches, again, very favourable. From a 40mm case diameter and a case height which I measured at 12.3, accompanied by the 45.8 lug-to-lug, I think this is a very smart choice in pretty much the sweet spot, which would suit many wrists. Now, I will share a couple of positives of what I think these watches had a first impact upon me. And firstly, I think the finishing and attention to detail on the case, the bracelet, has been done very well at this price point. Obviously, the size at 40mm is a big plus because generally speaking, that will suit many wrist sizes. Dimming the lights down, the lume was also superb on these, offering BGW9 Superluminova. So for a sports style watch, Traveler's GMT, that is more than sufficient. And I like the fact that they colour match the date wheels on all of these dials. That's a nice little touch. Now, an area which I found that certain brands will suffer, and not just Erebus, but many other micro brands and mainstream in general, is the price. Because for international buyers or watches that are going to go into the States, you can blame tariffs. There's also inflation, but the tariffs are going to play a big part in what the end user pays as compared to, let's say, if I was to buy the watch here in Australia. So that's something to consider, and I think that's a generalized statement, not only for Erebus, but also for many brands out there. Now, I understand that many brands also take a deposit and so forth. Personally, I've never been a really big fan of putting down a deposit as a pre-order, then waiting 6 months to actually get the watch and then pay the second balance. Sometimes with certain brands, you're going to get trust issues and so forth. Obviously with Erebus, you won't have an issue. I've seen all of their watches that they've produced. They've obviously delivered not only on time, but they've gone out and achieved what they said they were going to do. And Jody's a public figure. I'm sure he's not going to taint his reputation. So that's a no-brainer in that area. But I remember reviewing a watch or two several months back and people did comment saying, yeah, there's no way I'm going to pay this much money and wait 6 months or a year to get the watch. But just mentioning it nonetheless for certain people that might not be prepared to actually put down the money beforehand and then pay the balance to get the watch. But it's all part of that process. Now, speaking of the watch itself, I think personally the design is safe. In fact, it's very safe. You know that a Rolex Explorer 2 or a Grand Seiko or a Christopher Ward, they're going to work. They're a safe design. They don't deviate too much from what people have come to learn and expect from a good looking watch. And I remember many years ago we used to say to ourselves as enthusiasts, if you can't afford a Rolex Explorer 2 or if you can't get one, or maybe even a Grand Seiko GMT, then look at the Christopher Ward. Same basic design layout for a lot less money. And today we're probably finding ourselves saying, if you can't afford the Christopher Ward GMT, well then look at getting these Ascent GMTs. Same basic design layout. So everything is relative, and all things considered, I do like these watches. The quality of product in the hand is actually very good. I think Jody and Stephen have established themselves with their brand Erebus and have a very good following and support group. And you're probably watching this video because you are either interested in this watch or have already purchased it, or you're just interested in seeing what another watch reviewer's take is on these models. Or maybe just look at the pretty pictures. But whatever the case, my advice to Erebus as a company, as a brand, you have the backing, you have the supporters and the loyal followers. Be a little bit more daring in your up and coming watches. In other words, don't be scared to take a gamble on something a little bit more unique, not safe. Safe is good, safe sells. But experiment a little bit more with some design elements, and I think in future models, if Erebus takes a little bit of a risk and brings something more unique, albeit at the cost of either people hating it or loving it, then the brand will develop an identity that it can actually build on for years to come. And I say all this because the watches that they are producing are actually really well built and finished and spec'd for the money they're asking. And us as enthusiasts, we know that. And also that's why these watches sell, because of the price to quality ratio and features offered. So I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts on this particular brand. I love the enthusiasm behind Erebus. I think it's still a relatively young brand, but in the interim has offered quite a few models that have tickled our taste buds and also demonstrated what can be offered from a micro brand in the area of value, finishing, and getting watches onto people's wrists. And at the end of the day, I think that's important in keeping us fresh and vibrant in this hobby as long as we don't spend too much money. And my advice has always been to people, do your research, do your homework, make sure you know what you're buying, and you'll always get what you want. So thanks again, be good to one another, and continue to enjoy this hobby, and we'll see you all in the next one.